Let's play that broken record again. Gun violence in Portland is out of control.
Portland's supposed to be weird, right? That's its reputation. It's not supposed to be dangerous. And right now, it's dangerous.
We're on track to break records for shootings and deaths. Law enforcement is struggling to get the upper hand.
And no one is willing to talk with the police.
As officers reckon with a history of violence and racism.
Law enforcement historically has been abrasive to communities of color.
But what can we do right now to stop the bleeding? Here's the story.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Story. A lot of big news to talk about tonight, as you can probably tell from that open. I'm Maggie Vespa.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. We should also say this is my last night on the show, on The Story. We'll have plenty of time to address that at the end, but right now let's stick to the news.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, the one thing that's not changing about this show, no matter who's at the helm, is that you can contact us and weigh in, and we listen to and we work on, we do stories based on your feedback. So email thestory@kgw.com, reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are always listening. But with that, let's get to our big story. And tonight's big story is about gun violence. We are on track to have the most shooting deaths ever recorded in Portland's history. And you might remember we dedicated an entire show, an entire half hour to this topic a few months ago. We talked to victims, to law enforcement. We heard different possible solutions. And by the way, you can watch that entire special on our KGW YouTube channel now. Well, since then, I know we don't have to tell you, things have gotten worse. The Portland Police Bureau is understaffed. City leadership is struggling to find solutions, and community support has frankly never been lower. All of that despite the fact that the FBI stepped in to help. That happened over the summer. We covered it at the time. So are the feds making a difference? Here's Kristen Severance.
All we heard was bang, bang, bang.
People are not safe around here anymore.
Gun violence in Portland is not slowing down.
But it sounded like at least 10 just really quick, like, and then nothing, and then a car speeding off.
This shooting is just one of more than 900 shootings in Portland this year.
He was inside less than a minute when his life was ended by a bullet.
Police say gang-related shootings are happening nearly every weekend in Portland, sometimes with innocent people getting caught in the crossfire.
It tears my heart up.
Portland's supposed to be weird, right? That's its reputation. It's not supposed to be dangerous. And right now, it's dangerous.
Kieran Ramsey is the FBI's special agent in charge in Oregon.
There were a lot of headlines April, May, even June of this year. FBI helping, the gun violence problem in Portland. Haven't heard a ton from you over these, 3-4 months. How has it been going?
It's been very active. In fact, you're probably not going to hear a lot of things out there because a lot of the work that we do is behind the scenes. We really have a narrow focus, if you will.
The FBI has an agent respond to any shooting in Portland with a suspected gang tie. It's all part of the mission of the Metro Safe Streets Task Force created in the spring.
To identify those individuals, maybe they're gang members, maybe they're not, but that have been involved in shootings. And I'm not just talking one shooting, I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5 shootings.
Ramsey said they use something called the enterprise theory of investigation to get the worst offenders off the streets.
Where we try and connect one individual to another, and oftentimes that connection in this context involves guns and shootings, and trying to make sure that we identify these folks that are just repeatedly involved in shootings on the streets of Portland.
The most recent example is the arrest of 23-year-old twin brothers from Gresham, Thomas Edward Green and Edward Charles Green. According to court documents, the brothers are members of the Unthank Park Hustlers, a local Bloods gang set. Both are facing federal charges after illegally buying 82 guns linked to at least 10 shootings in Portland.
Most recent case, not just a couple of weapons, we're talking over 70, over 80 firearms. And then they're taking those as commodities, they're selling them, they're trading them, and again, we have this huge problem of availability of weapons in the hands of people that are absolutely willing to use them at any given moment.
Ramsey said the biggest challenge in trying to stop gun violence from a federal perspective in Portland is, number one, the prevalence of guns on the street, And number 2, the unwillingness of witnesses to come forward to help catch the people responsible for the gun violence.
And no one is willing to talk with the police. And the fact is, we need to reach some tipping point where that stops.
Ramsey has personally met with more than half a dozen community groups trying to build relationships and trust.
So that we're making that effort to engage with the community, gain that trust, so we can stop this.
Ramsey met with Word is Bond, a group who tries to improve relationships between young black men and police. Lakiana Drury runs the organization.
The meeting went well. I think one of the things I like about Kieran's approach is that he's trying to meet with community leaders.
I mean, do you think there is trust there when it comes to the community groups and the FBI?
No, not with Black community groups, right? We one of the things you have to understand is not particularly any individual, but the system as a whole, right? Law enforcement historically has been abrasive to communities of color. That trust I would say has never been there, and it's improved, but there's still a long way to go.
So you've met with all of those groups. Is it working? Do they trust you?
You know, trust is not built in a day. It takes time.
But Portland doesn't have time to waste. When we did this interview, there were 68 homicides in Portland, just 2 shy of surpassing the most deaths ever recorded in the city's history, when 70 people were killed in 1987. The FBI has upped the reward money for unsolved shooting deaths.
She was a great niece, and then I still miss her.
Like in the case of Evelyn Navarro Barajas. She was killed in June on Northeast Killingsworth. Her family said she had no gang ties. She was in a parking lot at the wrong time. The FBI offered $15,000 for information leading to an arrest, but the case is still unsolved. They plan to offer rewards for at least 4 more unsolved cases in the next few weeks, hoping money may motivate people to finally start talking.
Are you worried it's just going to get worse?
I certainly hope it doesn't. Again, this is it's already as bad as it can be right now.
Thank you to Kristen Severance. Let's talk COVID for just a moment. We seem to have made it through another surge in the COVID pandemic. Last month, you remember, hospitals were so overwhelmed with patients, they actually needed to call in the Oregon National Guard into our hospitals. But now the number of people in our hospitals is starting to fall, and the Guard members are actually starting to pull out. We chatted with Pat Doris about it a little earlier today.
Okay, let's talk to Pat Doris for a second. Pat, give us an idea, now that we're able to look back and see kind of the work that they've been doing, how the National Guard has been helping where they were needed.
Well, one of the big problems was a lot of these hospitals are staffed up at 75 to 80% capacity. And when COVID hit, especially with this Delta variant, they all blew up to way over 100%. So there was just way more than they could do with the regular staff. So like at Salem Hospital, bringing in these Guard members cut the meal delivery time by 22 minutes per patient. So that's a big deal if you're trying to order up hot food for your room. They've also doubled the number of times that the nurses' closets have been resupplied, so the nurses can keep working with the patients, don't have to run all over the place trying to find some sheets. And they've cut the patient transport time to get a patient from one place to another within the hospital by about 20%. So those are some of the real tangible things. And then the intangibles, they just tell me, the staff does, that it's nice to have people in military uniform there. They've felt a lot safer.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. You know, it does help the patients, but it also takes a little bit of the burden off those hospital workers who have been run ragged. Now they're starting, the National Guard, to pull out a little bit. They're going to start reducing the amount of help that they have in these hospitals, which sounds to me like good news, like they're not needed as much. Is that true?
That's right. It's tremendous news. The number of people hospitalized in Oregon for COVID are down 50% from where it was September 1st, which was the high point, around 1,100 patients. Now it's 50% lower than that. So it is trending in the right direction, and it seems that the crisis may be about to pass. Hopefully we don't get another surge, but right now things are definitely going in the right direction.
You said it. All right, Pat Doris, thank you.
My pleasure.
A dark history of racism and abuse at what are known as Indian schools across North America.
And some kids would go in at the age of 6
and would never be seen again.
You were beaten in some cases for, again, speaking your language. The mentality was kill the Indian, save the man. That was the government's policy.
The legacy of residential Indian schools in Oregon and what's being done now to heal. When the story continues. Welcome back. We always go through your questions and comments during the break. We want to hear what you think about the news that we do here in this town and on this show, because it's for you. So tell us what kind of news you want us to cover and how you want to see it covered. Use the email, the story at kgw.com. I almost said use hashtag Hey Dan, but that's only good for another like 18 minutes. Hey, I also want to remind you about the Hey Help campaign. This week, we're asking you to please consider donating to Rahab Sisters. They're an organization that helps out women and gender nonconforming people who have dealt with some of the most difficult things in life: poverty, houselessness, sex work, violence, and substance abuse. They need your help. They provide people with food, supplies, and in-person gatherings to help them build a sense of community. If you want to help them out, just pull out your phone, open up the camera, and point it at that QR code on your screen. It'll take you to a donation page. You can also go to kgw.com/heyhelp. And this is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount. It all helps, no matter how small.
An incredibly worthy cause. Our next story tonight: for many Native people, Indian boarding schools remain a dark and hidden history. And in fact, this week was Indigenous Peoples Day, and November is Native American Heritage Month. So in other words, it's time to talk more about this and hopefully help people heal. And a warning, by the way, some of the things you're about to hear are graphic. Here's Christine Pitawanich.
In the late 1800s, Indian boarding schools could be found across the U.S. and in the Pacific Northwest. Indigenous children were taken to the schools to learn trade skills, religion, and English. In 1880, one was established in Forest Grove for Native children all over the region. 5 years later, it moved to where Chemawa Indian School is today, just north of Salem. The history of Indian boarding schools is a traumatic one, well known among many tribes.
Siamanastalacha Salkeda is my Indian name. My Christian name is Freddie Lane. I'm Clactamish, Lummi is the reservation, Clackamas are the people of the Pacific Northwest.
Ana Sanchez. I am the Director of Family Services here at NAIA, and I'm also the State Representative for House District 43.
Yeah, I'm David Lewis, a member of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde and faculty at Oregon State University.
The stories and trauma associated with boarding schools have been passed down through generations by oral tradition. Many have called what happened cultural genocide.
And some kids would go in at the age of 6 and would never be seen again.
I have listened to stories from elders having this police car come and just take them all away and never seeing their parents again. They were forced to speak English. They were forced to learn Christianity.
You were beaten in some cases for, again, speaking your language. The mentality was kill the Indian, save the man. That was the government's policy.
Do you run into people who don't realize that this has happened in the United States, in Oregon?
Definitely. Again, it's something that Uncle Sam would rather not talk about.
That's because it's not easy to talk about.
Many of those children didn't make it home. There is a burial ground outside of Chemawa Indian Boarding School right now.
Pacific University researchers have documented nearly 300 students buried there. While generally sickness did spread in schools, those in the indigenous community say it wasn't just disease that killed students.
We're talking about, basically murder on the part of teachers in these schools.
The abuse that happened in those schools was immense. There was sexual abuse there. That's well documented.
The history is it's tragic.
Lane recalls a heavy conversation he had with a 75-year-old tribal chief who went to a boarding school in Canada.
These were his words. They abused me as a child, and I've never seen a chief cry. I wouldn't believe it if he didn't tell me how the priests up in Canada, they would rape the children, and the nuns would hide the pregnancy. And when the child was burned, those nuns who believed in God, in the name of God, they threw those children in the furnace. They were born and then they burned them.
Lane says in some cases, Native American women were sterilized at boarding schools. And to this day, the extent of abuse is difficult to quantify.
But we're not willing to look sometimes at the history right here in the United States. It's really quite sad.
But Sanchez says things are starting to improve, with the first Native American to serve as the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland,
who we are all so immensely proud of, has initiated a federal Indian boarding school initiative that will actually do some research into the boarding schools here in the United States.
And that may be how the healing starts, how we move forward, however painful it may be.
We really just have to own that these things happened, and an apology just won't do it.
They tell me Chemawa Indian School is very different than it was so long ago. In fact, Lane and his father attended the school. Students now choose whether they want to attend the high school. And for some, like Lane, it's a positive and life-changing experience. It's become a place where Indigenous people from different groups can come together, form lifelong friendships, and gain opportunity. Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
An important story, but surely a tough one to hear. Powerful, powerful stuff. Please stick around. We're going to be right back after the break. Maybe have a couple questions or comments, but we're going to finish the story and certainly say goodbye next.
You have got to be feeling so loved.
I do. It is sad though. It's bittersweet to use a cliche.
Yeah, you guys are lovely. The people that are writing in, it's really heartfelt. On that tearful note, we have come to the end of your last show. This is the end of Dan's time here and of your wife Kristen's time.
All mediocre things come to an end is a saying.
Yowza, not what anyone was going to say. But before we leave you, we wanted to take a look back because this show's really unique. And like, that's an understatement. Yeah, it's a little different. We wanted to take a look back at some of our favorite fun moments since launching the story.
Oh boy.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by.
That's the whale. You get a shot! You get a shot! You get a shot! Oh my goodness! Everybody gets a shot! 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 Everybody! Have you ever seen this weird talent I have with my hand?
They compromise. They reach across the aisle. They make their political parties really super mad sometimes. It's the moderates.
I'm just reading letters put together in words and sentences that I didn't write because I just got here 5 minutes ago, Kurt.
Stephanie, no disassemble bill number 5. Raleigh.
Timber Joey, the Oregon Duck, Phil Knight, which wasn't cheap, the exploding whale's ghost, the doctor at the Oregon Health Authority who dressed up as a clown to read daily COVID deaths, and the I Like Turtles kid.
I like turtles.
I do too, buddy. I do too.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by.
They blew this thing up. So please don't get distracted by the noise.
Weep not for the memory.
Yeah. That's some quality news work right there.
What is the matter with you?
That is a news show.
Oh my God.
This is a news show.
Who's Kurt?
I don't know. I'm yelling at Kurt, imaginary character.
We're so sorry.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
I think our bosses probably watched that compilation
All
of
those things
they let us do, and they're like, I don't know. It's a weird choice, but it was a pleasure. It was fun. I know a lot of people watch that stuff when we aired it and we're like, what in the world?
Why?
But a lot of people are like, this is fun. Because as you see, a night like tonight where we talk about some really serious topics, we try to bring a little bit of levity into it too, so that people can, I guess, deal with it, the difficulties of the world.
As much as possible. I told you this morning, and I'll tell you again, first of all, I've said to you many times that I think it was incredibly serendipitous that this show launched in January of 2020.
For sure.
And it was based on answering people's questions, and we've all never had more questions than we did during 2020. And so I think that was just fate, frankly, and you were the perfect person to lead it. On top of that, on a more personal note, we were all working from home. I was in my apartment trying to do the news on the hardest topics I've ever reported on, and every single day,
it was us.
I would have to record a talk back with you, and I would pop up on Zoom and chat with you. And every time I would log into that Zoom meeting, Dan would be there joking around, like talking about some action movie that I've never seen, and it would just be like, but it was my mental health check-in. Like, you were the person I talked to almost the most during
Wow.
COVID. And it meant so much to me. And you're an incredible friend and coworker.
I was going to say the same thing. Thank you. I don't know if a lot of people can tell. We clearly work really well together, but it's because we're such great friends.
Yeah.
And that's true for everybody on this team. And I think it's true for a lot of the people at home, too, because we talked so much together. I feel like I know them. And I'm going to say goodbye real quick.
I'm going to go this way. You guys have a moment.
Maggie's the best.
Have a moment.
All right, so this won't take long, trust me. I'll admit this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I kind of went into this a little cocky, like I can handle this goodbye, but it's been tough. I wrote a bunch of different drafts, a bunch of different versions. I wrote the thank you goodbye. That's a great place to start, to thank you for embracing this crazy little show and for all the wonderful messages and the emails. But that felt a little too obvious. So I wrote the selfless goodbye, because that's really who I am. You know what I mean? I talk about the amazing work that I got to introduce every single night on this show, from my wife Kristen and Maggie and Pat and Kyle and Mila and Steph and Ashley and Zach and Andy and Dave and John and Jay and Lindsay and Brian and Megan and Christina and Jean and Kurt. You know the team. But then I thought to myself, this is about me. I mean, this is my moment. This is my thing. So I wrote an all about me goodbye that started with like something, people didn't like me at first, but over time they blah, 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 bored me immediately. So I was a bit stumped. I even wrote that cliche news anchor goodbye where I'm like, thank you for letting me into your home every night, which always felt a bit creepy and presumptuous. Like, dude, it's a TV show, relax. So after all that, I decided to just give you the news, the facts. And I'll end with two facts for you tonight. The first fact is the local news is important. Be it this show or any other newscast on KGW or any other newscast on any other station in town or any local paper or publication. If you like something, local news in any way, watch it, read it, tell a friend about it. Pay for the subscription. It's an investment. Look, I know that cable news and Facebook feeds and podcasts and all that stuff, they have their place. They do. But we're the ones talking about your day-to-day life, where you live and drive and work and play and eat and pay and vote and learn. Local, KGW, Oregonian, Willamette Week, Statesman Journal, Newburgh Graphic, local. National politics matter, don't get me wrong. But if we've learned anything over the past 2 years, who your governor is more important than who your president is. I mean, that's who you truly ride out a pandemic with, right? Your mayor during protests and riots, your commissioners when crime is going crazy through the roof, your state senators after a wildfire takes your home. Fox and CNN, they will mention those things. They will. But you deserve more than a mention. And we are the only ones who really, truly care about you. So support us. If you demand a strong media, you will get one. And a strong media that listens to you will give you a stronger community by demanding stronger leadership and by demanding accountability, and you deserve it. The second fact is a little easier to explain. You'll forget about me soon, trust me. Despite everything we went through together, you will forget about me probably by Monday, and that's okay. Us news people, we come and go. It's part of the gig. But I promise you, this time that we have spent together every night at 6 o'clock, this show that we created together, will be with me always. So please, enjoy the next chapter of the story.